What's going on, guys? Well, it's about time for an update on the 2025 GSXR 1000. Now with just the other side of 2,800 miles on the clock. So what I wanted to talk about in this video are the modifications that I've done to this bike, some modifications that I might advise against, and give you guys an overview as far as the settings that I'm going with. So let's dive into this. Starting off at the front of the bike, still rocking the stock R11 front tire. It's a great tire. Bridgestone absolutely knocked it out of the park when it comes to the feel of this motorcycle going through corners. This tire, I don't know that you can do much better than this. So if I ever need a new front tire, it's definitely going back with an R11. I always end up forgetting about my winglet mirrors that I put on this thing. I never really use them though. I might crack them open if I might be riding at night and I just need to do just a blind spot check for headlights or something like that. But usually I don't even use the things. I just keep them as a winglet. So they may be getting pulled off for regular mirror block offs. We'll see about that. As far as the windscreen goes, this is a Suzuki branded windscreen. Let me show you the part number right over here. I believe that's showing up. It's made by MRA, but here's the thing. I couldn't order this through my Suzuki dealership. For whatever reason, it's just not available in the States. I go figure, right? But I did want it, and so I had to go snooping for it and found this one in England. So if you want one, it's got the GSXR badging on it, Suzuki branded. Made by MRA, it's their double bubble. If you don't want to go through the headache of finding this exact screen, just grab one of those double bubble MRAs and you'll be in good shape. Next on the list, we're going to talk about the ASV levers. The only downside to the ASV lever, if you want to call it that, let me show you guys something. You can hear that lever nice and loose, or I should say the free play is as it would be with stock. If you do get a set of ASVs for your bike, be mindful how you are tightening your bolt that secures everything together. I have to keep a little bit less tension. You can't just get in there and really crank down the tension on that thing. You want to tighten it down to where you can still move this around. It is a nylock nut, so don't worry about that thing coming off, although I did use blue Loctite and I used a locking nut underneath it. But that's more on peace of mind and being a bit anal about it. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure it had good free play, so that's where we are with that. All right, getting into some of the meat and potatoes of this bike, there's the M4 stainless exhaust poking out underneath that fairing. There's the carbon can hanging out back there. Guys, this motorcycle with the M4 exhaust and the tune by More Mafia, this is an absolute pleasure to ride. It's a monster in terms of power, but it is such a sweetheart when you're not trying to hammer on it. Now, I will say this, the exhaust and the tune are all that is done from a power standpoint. It does still have the factory air filter and the factory velocity stacks. With that setup, this bike has never run better. I'm going to talk a little bit about those Carbon Smith velocity stacks and the DNA air filter, the tune that went along with it, and why I went back to stock. Okay, so creeping out back, there's our S23 rear tire. I think this rear tire's got about 13 or 1,400 miles on it, give or take. Might be a little bit more than that. We're using the entire tire, as you can see. Guys, these S23s are really good. I do spend a lot of up and down riding, getting to where I'm riding usually about an hour there and an hour back. So there is a little bit of a flat spot forming, but nothing near as bad as you might expect for this type of wear. But it is a 1,000cc super bike. And so, yeah, she's going to be going through tires, so I can't really expect too much life out of that. Also, sometimes fail to mention this bike does have a 44 tooth super light rear sprocket, and went with a 44 mainly because I'm trying to take a little bit of the bite going down a tooth out of this bike. But listen, with the tune that's on this bike and the exhaust, you'd never know it. This bike will actually try to power wheelie in fifth gear when it's light on fuel, and that's a lot of fun. So I'll give you an idea what kind of power this bike's making. It is a riot to ride. So let's duck in the office and talk a little bit more about this thing. And we're back. Okay, so as far as modifications for power, I'm leaving the bike absolutely alone the way that it sits. The factory air filter doesn't seem to be much of a hindrance in terms of making power with these bikes, and you get all of the benefit of the filtering that that factory filter will give you. I did notice with the DNA air filter that the inside of the airbox could get a little bit dusty, although it wasn't bad. It was just a bit concerning, I suppose, not to mention the fact since it wasn't making any more power, and well, in a contest of speed, if you will, it didn't seem to help the bike, then there's no reason to keep the thing around. So back in the stock filter went. The other part of it comes with the velocity stacks. I had these Carbon Smith velocity stacks on the bike, and well, I gotta tell you guys, this is where things get a little bit, well, let me just go through this like this. When I had originally put the velocity stacks on the bike, I had sent the computer back over to More Mafia for a tune for that machine to go along with the DNA air filter and the full exhaust. What was weird about it is that initially the bike felt like it ran pretty good. It didn't really feel like it lost anything, it just became a bit smoother. And well, it never really had a peak of any real power rush on the big end. It also never really had that major hit of mid-range power that it has with those factory velocity stacks. But there was a bit of a transition where the bike felt better, and I thought overall it was a smoother and maybe a bit more controllable in high speed, high bank angle type of situations. Powering out of those is what I'm getting at. Well, the thing is that the bike just didn't perform the way that I felt that it should. And so when I put the factory velocity stacks back in the bike, as well as a factory filter, I sent the computer back to More Mafia to have it reflashed. When I got it back, the bike ran better than it ever did before. And so I don't know if maybe there was the wrong tune installed. I mean, you got to remember these are canned tunes, and somebody may have looked at my work order and just didn't get the right tune when they were flashing my computer. Completely understandable, and I get that, but the reality is that by going back with the factory components, my bike runs a whole lot better, and it is a bit more punchy pretty much everywhere. It doesn't feel like it lost a step. Matter of fact, it feels like it kind of got more powerful everywhere by going back with this route. So use that information and do with it what you will, but I gotta tell you, these things ain't going back in that bike. Now, I want to talk about my overall experience with this motorcycle, and I guess it's the whole would I recommend this bike if you're thinking about getting a leader class motorcycle. Yeah, so far this has been one of the best motorcycles I've ever ridden, and I ride a lot of bikes, and I gotta tell you, there's nothing that I would take away from any other leader class bike. I can only tell you that the GSXR 1000, with the ergonomics of the bike, it's extremely rider friendly, it's more comfortable, it's not as committed as other super bikes may be, and so because of that, it fits me very well. Just in general, the overall fit and finish of the bike is really good. Again, overall, couldn't say anything bad about this bike. But I do have to say this, the suspension from the factory, rather stiff, and you might even find it to be a bit harsh. So here are my suspension settings on my bike. This might help you out if you've got one of these bikes and you're finding it to be a bit jarring. Well, this might help you along. So I've got my cheat sheet right behind me, my fork preload, and these settings, by the way, are from the verified factory settings on the bike. So I set the bike straight up to factory settings per the owner's manual, and then these are the modifications from that base setting. So the fork preload, I've got turned 1/2 turn out, which is anytime you're talking about turn out is counterclockwise. And that is yielding a 37 millimeter sag up front. For the front forks, compression and rebound are both a 1/4 turn out or another 1/4 turn to the left. I will say that when it cools off a little bit, that setting may get opened up another eighth of a turn. We'll see. It can be a little bit on the jittery side in cooler weather, but in hot or warm weather, that setting works very nicely. As far as the rear preload is concerned, I've made no changes to that whatsoever. And with me weighing just the other side of 200 pounds, it gives right at about a 35 millimeter sag out back. The rear shock high-speed dampening, and in this case high-speed just means how fast the shock moves, that hard shock. That high-speed dampening, I've got a full turn out on that. The low speed, which is more of a progressive rate, that low-speed dampening is a half turn out, and then rebound is 3/4 of a turn out. So what you might get from that is that I spent a whole lot of time on that rear suspension trying to rein it in a little bit, because undulations and unevenness in the road would send all of that force right through the chassis and right into the spine of the rider. And so to get it to be a bit happier on the street, I had to start making some changes. And with the amount of time that I do spend upright on this bike, traveling to my favorite ride spot, I had to make some changes to this bike, or else it was gonna remain to be much more uncomfortable and much less fun to ride. Now that the suspension is more compliant, it's a really nice place to be for extended periods of time. And that suspension setup, by the way, is managing significant lean angle and significant speed through fast sweepers and through tight bends. Some of this riding that you've seen when I do the ride reviews or when I'm just giving general thoughts, that's the suspension settings that I'm using, and it works out great. Oh, and to go along with the suspension settings, tire pressures. So I will typically run 36 or 37 out back, and I'll run 34 or 35 up front, PSI. The bike seems to like that. It's nice and compliant. Any more than that, and it starts to get a little bit harsh. You get into like the 38 PSI out back, and it can get just downright annoying at that point, oddly enough, especially in cooler weather. So again, figure around 37 and 35, 36, and you'll be in good shape for that. So with that, guys, would I recommend this bike if you're looking for a motorcycle? The GSXR 1000, is it a good place to start? Absolutely, especially if you're a little bit taller or bigger rider. The ergonomics will be a bit more accommodating for you in that respect. And listen, as far as electronic doodads, the quick shifter, this is one thing I do want to caution you on with the GSXR 1000. That quick shifter works exceptionally well, and it is glitch free provided that you are using it for upshifts above about 4,000 RPM. Anything less than that, you're better off using the clutch, mainly because the quick shifter on the GSXR 1000 doesn't really work well with slow speed shifting. You've got to make sure that you are committed and shifting more quickly to get that unit to work right. And to be honest with you, if you're shifting below 4,000, really even 5,000 RPM, and you're going slow with your foot, you can get a bit of a bobble, and that's just kind of the way that this thing works. So again, I typically will use the clutch to shift if I'm below those lower RPM ranges. As far as downshifting, it seems to do okay on downshifting, but again, it works great at higher RPM, but at lower RPM, it will have a tendency to have a little bit of a lurch, if you will. And so just understand that it is a quick shifter. Don't lollygag with your shifting, boys. Go ahead and, don't, abuse it, but just make sure your actions are quick and that you're using them at a higher RPM, and it'll work out flawlessly. So with that, guys, there's your update on this motorcycle. Absolutely love riding this bike, and it's been one of the more fun experiences for me. It's one of the most thrilling machines that you can ride, but it's not at all scary. The riding of this bike is no different than any other motorcycle that I do ride and reviews on. It's got a lot of power, but it is a pussycat unless you are really leaning on it. And, well, you know what you're doing when you start to lean on a leader bike, and you know the results to expect. And this bike will give those results in volumes. But in saying that, again, it's as streetable as any other motorcycle. The tune that's on it for More Mafia, the fueling is extremely nice. It's not jerky. It's very smooth. And guys, again, I can't really say much else about this bike. It's the bike that I would buy again for sure. And if you're thinking about getting one of these bikes, throw a leg over one, take it for a spin. I think you're going to be impressed with it. So with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Post up your comments, let me know what you think, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.